So, you want to be a doctor? Today I'm going to be teaching you how to get into medical school and 10 things to consider before you apply. Hi and welcome back to this channel. My name is Dr. Lindsay Marie. I'm a Christian comedian missionary doctor sharing a message of hope, health, and wellness for the mind, body, and soul. If you don't want to miss any future videos, make sure you hit the subscribe button and don't forget to stay till the end of the video for a word of encouragement. So now we can get into those 10 things to consider before applying to medical school. And I have my computer here, so I will just be referencing some notes, so don't mind me if I glance down every now and then. So the first thing I want you to know before deciding to become a doctor and before applying to medical school is to know what it takes. Medicine isn't just a career, it's a lifelong calling, and you're going to be constantly growing and learning in this career, so it's something you have to be prepared for. So with that being said, you want to be sure that medicine is the career for you. One really good way to do this is to follow as many doctors as you can. That way you get a chance to get into the hospital and see exactly what type of work they do to be sure that you want to do this as well. Along with knowing what it takes is knowing the cost. A career in medicine costs a lot of money, and most doctors are in a high amount of debt after they finish their training. It also takes years to become a doctor. In the United States, it takes at least a decade, if not more, depending on the specialty that you go into. So that's a lot of sacrifice, blood, sweat, and tears, and because of the rigorous training and curriculum, it can affect your mental health if you're not prepared for it. So you want to know your why. Why are you going into medicine? Why do you want to become a doctor? Most people want to go into medicine because they want to help people or they have a love for science and they see it as a challenging and rewarding career. But definitely don't go into medicine if it's just for the money, because like I said, you're going to be in debt for a long time before you even see any of that money as yours. The second thing you want to consider before going to medical school is the type of medical school that you want to go into. In the United States, there are two types of medical schools. One is the traditional medical school, which is a 4-year program, but some schools do offer an accelerated program that is only 6 years, which combines your undergraduate training and your medical training. There are also different types of degrees offered at each medical school. The two main medical degrees are the MD, which is medical doctor, or DO, which is doctor of osteopathic medicine. Both are very similar in their training, but the doctor of osteopathic medicine does offer some additional training in osteopathic medicine, which can be a little bit more of an extended training program for the musculoskeletal system and some spinal manipulation techniques. Not to be confused with a chiropractor. A lot of schools also offer a dual degree program. My school offered the MD degree plus a PhD. That was a 7-year program, and I know of a DO school where you can also get your MBA, Master's in Business Associates. So if you're thinking of being an extra high achiever and you want to get another degree along with your medical degree, then you may want to consider researching about some of these other schools. Along with the type of medical school, you want to be considering the tuition cost of the school. Most schools vary from state to state, and you can expect a higher tuition cost per year if you're going to an out-of-state medical school. And let me tell you people, going to medical school in the United States is not cheap. I just looked up tuition costs yesterday and I was shocked to find out that most in-state tuition costs per year nowadays are in at least the $30,000 range, if not up to the $60,000 range. Back when I went to medical school, my medical school tuition was $22,000 per year. And you got to keep in mind that does not include your living expenses. So you got to consider at least another $20,000 for living expenses on top of your tuition fees, depending on how expensive you live or how many fancy coffees you get each day. And the more money you spend throughout medical school can have the chance to exponentially increase if you don't get a handle on your interest rates when paying back your loans. So definitely tuition is a huge thing to consider before going to medical school. There's a few more things I have listed here for considering the type of medical school, and one of them is also to consider the state that your medical school is in. Back when I was applying to medical school, I wanted to apply to an MD program. There was only one MD school offered in my state. So if I wanted to get that cheaper in-state tuition, I only had one school, and that means one chance to get in. But if you're lucky and you live in a bigger state such as California, you may have more options to get into medical schools there, as they have up to 11 medical schools to get into. Keep in mind, each of those schools could have a different level of competitiveness to get in. Speaking of competitive schools, you want to also factor in the class size of that school, which could affect the level of competitiveness. And lastly, I want to mention that you want to consider the school's campus locations. For instance, my school actually had 2 campus locations, and some students were split up in their 3rd and 4th year to go to that other location. So that's something to consider, especially if you own your own home and you have to think about uprooting your family or your house during that time. The number 3 thing to consider before applying to medical school is the type of college degree that you will have. There are 2 main types, BS, Bachelor of Science degree, and BA, Bachelor of Arts degree, and I'm going to be going over each of these. So the first one is the Bachelor of Science degree. As you can imagine, it can be any type of science, chemistry, physics, biochemistry, biology. I would say that the majority of pre-medical students do end up picking biology for their degree, and it's mostly because biology is a good science foundation for a lot of the medical school curriculum, or because they were instructed by the dean of their college to take biology for pre-medical curriculum. I myself did not do biology. I did nutritional sciences, and I really liked it because it gave me a lot more insight into the science of nutrition and how nutrition plays a huge role in the health of our bodies and prevention of diseases. It's also more heavily based in biochemistry, so I felt like I got a better foundation of those courses along the way, which prepared me better for medical school as well. So what is the advantage of the Bachelor of Science degree? It is that it can help you build more of your foundational sciences and prepare you well for the MCAT. One of the disadvantages of the Bachelor of Science degree is that most everybody chooses the Bachelor of Science for pre-medical curriculum, and if you pick biology like everybody else, you may not stand out as much in your undergraduate degree. Now for the Bachelor of Arts, this can be anything including theater, film, dance, languages. Medical schools love seeing a well-rounded student, so if you have a Bachelor of Arts, you actually have an advantage of standing out compared to your peers. One disadvantage of having the Bachelor of Arts degree is that you may have less science courses to help prepare you for both the MCAT and the medical school curriculum, but all students going to medical school do have to take the basic prerequisite science courses, so that should be enough to prepare you for the MCAT and your science in medical school. All right, the number 4 thing to consider before applying to medical school, and this is a big one, and it is your GPA or your grade point average. Medical schools can be pretty strict when it comes to the GPA, and the bare minimum I would say to get into medical school would be to have a GPA of 3.0 and higher. Now, remember, that's only the minimum. Most schools are looking for an average GPA of at least 3.8. So that's pretty high. That's going to be the student who has mostly A's, maybe only a few B's throughout their entire undergraduate coursework, and definitely not very many C's or D's. If you're a student who has C's or D's, you want to consider retaking that course to get a higher grade that will help boost your GPA. I do want to say that you can have a lower GPA and still get into medical school, but you're going to have to counteract a lower GPA with a much higher MCAT score, which we'll go over in just a little bit. So if you're a student still in high school and you want to become a doctor, that's a really good time to practice good studying habits so that you can get a higher GPA both in high school and in college. The number 5 thing to consider before applying to medical school is extracurricular activity. This is any activity that you do outside of school. So it can actually be your work or things like sports, hobbies, clubs that you're involved in, anything that you do outside of school that you enjoy and you love. I also wrote down here mission trips because it shows your desire for service, and a lot of medical schools are looking for the service-oriented people. Basically, when it comes to extracurricular activity, the main thing that medical schools are looking for is that you are a very well-rounded person. They want to see that you can maintain a fairly good GPA, but also maintain a life outside of your schoolwork. Okay guys, we are about halfway through the list right now. I hope you are getting a lot out of this. If you are, let me know in the comments section. Moving on to the number 6 thing to consider before applying to medical school, and that is publications. Now, I wrote this one on here because for whatever reason, medical schools absolutely love applicants who have publications. Don't ask me why. We're not all gifted with this special ability to write publications, but for whatever reason, if you do have a publication out there, you are bumped up 1 notch higher on the application list into medical school. Some people have the opportunity to be listed in a publications, for instance, if you are a lab assistant to one of your professors. Back when I was in college, I had the opportunity to work for a professor on a cancer research project, and my name was included in the publication. Again, they are not needed or absolutely required to get into medical school, but they can definitely give you a big advantage. So that would be one thing to consider to add to your application to stand out, especially if you are worried about a lower GPA or lower test scores. Speaking of test scores, the number 7 thing to consider before applying to medical school is the MCAT. MCAT is otherwise known as the Medical College Admissions Test. And let me tell you, it is a beast. This is the test that separates the men from the boys, the women from the girls. The MCAT is right up there with the GPA in terms of importance, and you want both to be as high as you can to be considered a good applicant for medical school. So what exactly is the MCAT and what will you be tested on? Well, I'm going to read my notes here for you, and this comes directly from the AAMC.org website, which is the Association of American Medical Colleges website. And that's actually going to be your go-to resource when it comes to anything related to the MCAT or applying to medical school, and I will put the link in the description box below. So the MCAT is a computer-based exam divided into 4 sections, and they are biological and biochemical foundations of living systems, chemical and physical foundations of biological systems, psychological, social, and biological foundations and behavior, and critical analysis and reasoning skills. I believe it's a 4-hour test now, taken at a computer center. Back in my day when I took the MCAT, this was 13 years ago already. Can't believe it. I took a handwritten test, and I believe it was a 9-hour test, or at least it was an all-day test. It was a lot longer back then. Thankfully for you, they've shortened it, but don't worry, you'll have plenty of 9-hour tests in medical school. Now let's talk about scoring. It looks like the scores are broken down into sections, and then you'll get a total score which ranges anywhere from 472 to 528. Now this is a lot different scoring system than the one I had, but I did do my research for you guys, and it looks to be like the average score needed to get into most medical schools is anywhere between a 495 and a 520. And I found this information on mcattestscores.com, so I will also put a link to that one in the description box as well. It gives a list of every single medical school in the United States and the required average MCAT score needed to be considered a competitive applicant for that school. I also wanted to mention that there is a lot of preparation materials or study guides that you can find online, as well as practice tests. You want to take as many practice tests as you can, and that will give you a guide for where you're scoring at. And the more you take, the more you can see a trend in your score. Hopefully it's going up, and when you're at a good test score range on your practice test, that's when you know you're ready to take the real exam. For any of you who are in that process right now, good luck to you all. I know it is one of the hardest obstacles to overcome when getting into medical school, but I believe in you. Okay, moving on to the number 8 thing to consider before applying to medical school, and that is having some sort of healthcare experience. As high school students, you may think you may not have that much opportunity to get healthcare experience before going to medical school, but you'd be surprised. You can actually apply for some basic medical entry jobs, including CNA, which is Certified Nurse's Aide, or MA, which is a medical assistant. A lot of those jobs only require a 1 to 3 month training course, so it's something that could be easily obtained in high school or college, and you can work at a hospital, clinic, or nursing home in the summers during your time off. Keep in mind, it doesn't always have to be an actual job either. You could ask to be a volunteer at a hospital, and this can even include things like working in transport at a hospital or even the kitchen staff. A lot of students have relatives or family members who work in healthcare, so you can ask if you can shadow them maybe once a week or once a month, and that shows that you're interested in or getting healthcare experience before you even start medical school, which looks really good on your application to medical schools. The number 9 thing to consider before getting into medical school is the interview. Now, just like everything else we already talked about, the interview is a very important factor in getting into medical school. It's putting a face to your name. It's showing how you are and act as a human being. Would this person be a good doctor? Do they have what it takes? Not only on paper, but also in person. I have a list here that also came from the AAMC.org website, which tells you everything they are looking for in the interviews. So they are going to be asking you a ton of questions and picking your brain to see if they can see in you these qualities, which are service orientation, social skills, cultural competence. They want to see that you work well in a team. They're looking for your oral communication abilities. They're going to be looking at your reliability and dependability, your resilience and adaptability. They want to be able to see your tolerance for stressful situations and changing environments. And that is huge when you think about it, because as doctors, we are constantly under stress. Taking care of life and death matters every single day. Another thing they want to see is your capacity for improvement. They want to see that you can set goals for continuous improvement and for learning new concepts and skills. And another very important thing that they're looking for is your ethical responsibility to self and others. They have all these questions that they're going to ask you, and one of the main ones that they always ask is an ethical question. For instance, they will give you a scenario that a person is coming in with a hemoglobin of 6.2. That's below the critical level and they need a blood transfusion. However, this person is also a Jehovah's Witness and cannot absolutely, for whatever reason, take a blood transfusion. But he's gonna die if you don't give it to him. What do you do? That's how they pick your brain and put you under some stress in the interview. So look up those kinds of questions and be prepared for that. The main thing is to pick an answer and stick to it and make sure it's the ethically appropriate answer. And that brings us to our 10th and final thing to consider before applying to medical school, and that is perseverance. Let's be honest, like I said in my intro video, a career in medicine is not for the faint of heart. And if you've started on this journey already, you know how hard it can be to get into medical school. I'm here to tell you that if you have perseverance to keep going when the going gets tough, you will make it to the other side and become a doctor. And it happened to me. Here I am, board certified family medicine doctor, 13 years later. Thank you very much. Before I started my journey into medicine, I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't know how hard it was going to be. So I can't stress enough the hard work and sacrifices you are going to put in as a doctor. But if that's something that you've always wanted to do, I encourage you to go after your dreams and your goals. And with perseverance, you can do it. Don't be discouraged. If you don't get into medical school the first time, ask them why and find out ways you can improve your application to get in the next year. The same thing happened for me. I was worried that my lowest point on the application was my MCAT score. I was prepared to take the MCAT again to raise my score. However, I had already applied and found out before I had to take the MCAT again that I was accepted to medical school the second year. So never give up. As long as you don't quit, you will achieve your dreams. The difference between a successful person and others is not lack of strength or knowledge, but lack of will. Where there is a will, there is a way, and I have confidence and faith in you to achieve your dreams. And there is a scripture on perseverance that I want to leave with you all today, and that comes from Romans 5:3-5, which states, "We also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance produces character, character produces hope, and hope does not put us to shame." So there you have it. That is some of my experiences getting into medical school and my list of things to consider before applying to medical school. I hope that this video was informative and encouraging for you all. If you watch this video, I would love to know in the comments section where you're at on your journey into medicine, if that's you. If you would like more videos like this one, make sure you let me know and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video. Until next time, bye!